The foundation for estimation and rounding is set from as early as year 7 and 8, and in today's lesson we will explore rounding to different degrees of accuracy. This lesson will be divided into 3 sections. In section 1, we will be rounding to the nearest integer. In section 2, we'll cover rounding to different decimal places. And finally, in section 3, we will conclude this lesson with rounding to given significant figures and estimating calculations. All 3 sections will be uploaded separately and will include an independent practice worksheet with answers. So guys, let's begin by focusing on section 1, rounding to the nearest integer. In mathematics, estimation means finding a value that is close to the actual answer but not necessarily exact. Now, it involves using rounded numbers or simplifying calculations to get a quick approximate result. So I can do a quick rough check in my mind. For example, I'm going to the supermarket and I want to find out how much money should I take there. I can just do a quick estimate by rounding off all the items I need, rounding the money, and do a quick calculation. Now, when we talk about rounding, this means to make a number simpler but keeping it close to the value that it was. However, the result is going to be a little bit less accurate. Beautiful. Now we're rounding to the nearest integer, so it's important for us to talk about what an integer is. So an integer is a whole number, not a fraction at all. That can be either positive, negative, or it could also be 0. Now, a very easy way to remember this definition is to think about the set of integers on the number line. So on a number line, we've got just whole numbers, but we've got a positive side, we've got a negative side separated by our 0, which is our starting point. So if you think about the number line, you are in essence thinking about all the set of integers. Now, how do we round to the nearest integer? So to round to the nearest integer, we simply follow these steps. Now we need to write these down. So step 1, in order to round to the nearest integer, I first of all need to identify the 10th place, which actually is the number that comes exactly after the decimal point to the right. So the number immediately to the right of my decimal point is my 10th place. Now, once I've identified that, step 2, I need to check this digit. Now, if the digit in the 10th place is 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, I need to round up by 1 integer part. However, if the digit is 0 to 4, I need to round down. By that I mean keeping the value exactly as it is, not adding or subtracting anything at all. And we'll see what that looks like when we do our examples. Now, third step, we need to write the rounded integer for our answer. So, if we're rounding up, the number is going to be increasing by 1 integer part. However, if we're rounding down, we're keeping that part the same. We need to then remove all decimal points and any digit that is to the right of that decimal point. So once you've written this down, now we're going to look at some questions. So the first question here asks us to round 7.4 to the nearest integer. Now I'm going to use the number line to bring this concept about, and then we focus on the rules. So consider this number line here. I'm asked to round 7.4. So first of all, I'm going to identify where on the number line 7.4 would be. So I know halfway between 7 and 8 is 7.5. Therefore, 7.4 is just 0.1 away. Therefore, it is closer to 7 than it is to 8. So I could reason it that way as well. So this is the symbol for approximation. So it's approximately 7. Very important to write approximation because the answer is not actually 7, but it is close to 7. Beautiful. So we look at another example involving the number line. This time we're asked to round 8.7 to the nearest integer. Again, we're going to use the number line to bring this across. So we know halfway between 8 and 9 is 8.5, but 8.7 will be a little bit closer to 9 than it is to 8. So as an integer, it would be approximately 9 as a whole number, closer to 9. Now, with that being said, we're going to now use the rules that we've just developed. So we're asked to round all of these 6 numbers to the nearest integer. So 13.36. Remember, rule 1 is to identify the digit in the 10th place. So 3 is in the 10th place. We now focus on, am I rounding up or am I rounding down? So 3 is less than 5, so I've got to round this number down. Remember, rounding down means keeping the value exactly as it is, putting away everything to the right, including the decimal point. So this is approximately then 13 as a whole number, closer to 13. Part B, 95.7281. Digit in the 10th place is 7, fits the criteria of rounding up. So then I need to add 1 integer part to 95. Therefore, as an integer, this would be 96. Amazing. So part C, we've got 1259.624. Digit that's in the 10th place is 6. Criteria meets the criteria for rounding up. Amazing. So we're going to add 1 to the 9 here. However, when we add 1 to the 9, we treat this just as we would have done the column method of addition. So therefore, this 59, if we consider that, would now be 60. So the answer is approximately 1260. Part D asks us to round 0.485 to the nearest integer. So again, the 4 is in the 10th place. Remember, 4 we have to round down. So therefore, the number is going to actually be just 0. This is okay because 0 is also an integer. Beautiful. Part E, we've got some, and F, we've got some negative numbers, but though the numbers are negative, the criteria remains the same and we still apply the same method of rounding. So minus 5.8145 in the 10th place is 8, which means we're rounding up. So the answer will be -6. So part F, we've got minus 230.803. In the 10th place is 8, again, rounding up. So our answer would be minus 3231. No decimal or zeros added at all. So we've practiced 6 questions. We're going to do 2 other questions and then we will summarize. So, in this example, a worded question, we're told that Hanan rounded a number to the nearest whole number. Again, nearest integer. Her answer was 600. write down 5 different possible numbers that she could have rounded. So we need 5 numbers that when we finish rounding to the nearest integer, the answer is still 600. Now, lots of numbers meet this criteria. So I'm just going to write the first 5 that comes to my mind. So the answer to this question, I could have 599.5. If I check my 10th place, I can see if I round up this 5 here, it will be 600. Could also be 599.0.6. Let's say 0.6. That also fits the criteria. But could I have numbers that are bigger than 600 as well? The answer is yes. So I could also have 600.1. because this one would need to round down and I would still be at 600. I could have 600.4 also being rounded down, so therefore also meet the criteria. I could also have 600.35 also rounding down. So multiple options that you could have, and you could still get the answer correct. The point is, once we attempt rounding up or down, the answer should round either up to 600 or down to 600 as well. So those are 5 answers. The next question says Melina has divided 2,355 by a number on her calculator. The calculator shows the answer. So the answer on the calculator is 23.55. Part A asks us, what number did Melina divide 2,355 by? So if I write 2355, the answer she got was 23.55. So I want to focus on how did I get from 23.55 to 23.55. In some earlier video, I looked at connections and reasoning of numbers. So I can see here 2 ways to do this. I could just do 2355 divided by the answer, and that would get me the number I divided by. Or I could just simply look at it and say, how did I get from this number to the answer? Either way, you should be able to see she had divided by 100. So if you look, 1, 2, that gets me to 23.55. So our answer is 100. Part B says, round our answer to the nearest integer. So the answer on the calculator was 23.55. Again, we check our 10th place. It's 5, so we're rounding up. So to the nearest integer, the answer would be 24. So those are some ways that our questions could be posed as well on rounding to the nearest integer. And then final question. We're asked here to estimate the following calculation by rounding all numbers to the nearest integer. So 29.75 plus 80.47 divided by 9.82. So first of all, we need to round all numbers to the nearest integer. So 29.75 rounds to 30. So we're doing 30 plus 80.47 rounds down. If you look at the 4, we must round down, so we've got 80, and then we've got 9.2. 8 is in the 10th place, that rounds up to 10. So essentially, we're doing 80 plus 30, which is 110, divided by 10, which is equal to 11. See, we could get an idea of what our final answer would be close to if we use estimation to the nearest integer. So that would be our answer. Now, it's time for our key takeaways. So we talked about the fact that estimation means keeping a value close to the actual answer, but not necessarily exact. It involves using rounded numbers. Now, remember, we talked about rounding means making a number simpler, but keeping the value close to what it was. The value is going to be less accurate, however, it's much easier to use. We also talked about the fact that An integer is a whole number, and we looked at how to round to the nearest integer. First of all, we look at the digit in the 10th place. If the digit is 5 or more, then we are rounding up, and this means adding one integer part to the number that we have been given. If we're rounding down because the number is 0 to 4, we are keeping the number exactly as it is, not adding or subtracting anything at all. Now remember also, guys, I've said in the beginning that we could use the number line to help us to remember the concept of integers, because the number line only shows us the positive, negative numbers along with 0, no fractions at all. So the set of integers, positive, negative numbers that are whole numbers along with 0. Also, in my introduction to this video, I talked about the fact that this is a 3-part video and I'm going to be uploading them separately. So this is part 1. Make sure that you stay tuned to see part 2 and 3 when it's uploaded. So make sure you hit the notification bell. If you haven't yet liked the video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. Also share, and also remember, we are on TikTok. Thank you guys so much for watching.